Welcome to the Great Distraction.
What's up, folks? This is The Great Distraction, and today the topic of discussion is gender equality. My name is Ben, and with me today are my co-host Thomas.
How's it going?
Glenn.
Hello, folks.
And Shane.
Hey.
Thank you for joining us. The Great Distraction is a podcast that focuses on a vast and random range of topics, and we hope that each episode leaves you with, if nothing else, something to ponder. As always, we would love to hear from you. Questions, comments, and topic suggestions are always welcome. You can contact us on Facebook or by email at greatdistractionpodcast@gmail.com. Did I get through that fast enough? I tried.
That was pretty quick.
Yeah.
All right.
Everybody's listening to this stuff at double speed anyway, right?
Yeah, or worse. So what I fear worse too is that some of the podcasts I listen to that have advertisements in the beginning, and they always have an advertisement in the beginning. Well, you just set that thing to skip the first minute, which sucks because if you change the intro a little bit, like in some coming episodes here, I'm hoping to announce a few things, right? And I want to put those in the beginning. Well, if anybody's got their podcast player set to skip the first whatever, they're going to miss it altogether. Oh, that sucks. But
So if
You're
you're
going to
listening
miss
out
the
there,
funniest part of the show.
Yeah,
The first minute is the best part.
well, we introduce who's going to actually be on this show, right? Because there's no other way to know. I don't put it in the show notes or
and
anything.
how can you fast forward through Fat Dancer?
How can you actually skip
Seriously.
that? How do you not groove when you hear the fat dancer tell
Dude,
you to
every
dance?
time we start this up, I'm doing a little dance right before we start.
Of course you are.
She's awesome.
Wait.
I don't know why she's a she, but it's because of the gender equality episode.
Wait, what?
The fat dancer.
Oh.
Okay. But if I'm dancing, there's a fat dancer. So what are you trying to
So
say?
Are you trying to
So
say
the-
you want to be the fat dancer?
Well, there's the equality, Glenn.
Awesome.
It can be a male dancer or a female dancer.
It's a fat dancer.
I'm sensing
As
a
long
lot
as they're
of,
fat, I guess that's the
Right.
thing.
I'm sensing a lot of gender discussion in this here today. We got the aura about us for this one, huh? We're
Feeling
ready.
very equal.
Yeah,
Yes.
Are you a fork or a knife?
I'm a spoon.
Oh,
A big spoon. All right, let's see here. I want to lay down some foundation stuff
you
before
say
we.
foundation?
I did.
foundation.
Actually. Lay down some foundation here before we get started on this topic.
A little foundation, a little hydration.
We're gonna water the seeds. Yes,
All right.
We're gonna grow them into a topic. Here. Absolutely. And the first thing I want to say is, we are all guys here. So, as we talk about gender equality and don't have a member of the opposite gender to speak on that half,
To, equalize our topic here.
we're going to approach this topic very unequally. However, we're going to do the best that we can to accurately represent as best we can, the female perspective as we understand it, based on our experiences. And I don't mean that as a joke. It just sounds ridiculous to say. So bear with me. And as we get through it, hopefully you understand that we're doing the best we can here. And that said, this particular topic is just something being discussed merely for the sake of pondering. Just like we do every other topic. We're not really trying to make any bold statements or...
We're not trying to solve the reasons to march
Yeah,
or
we
any
never
of the
are- yeah,
problems
we
on
never-
life.
We're
never-
merely talking through this to try to work out an understanding.
And I think
For ourselves,
I
for
think one
sure.
of the biggest things to understand, especially from if anybody's listening out there, and I think that one of the things that we try to do in this podcast is we have a very open perspective of explaining and talking about topics and understanding that we can all be wrong, and we're okay with being wrong, and we're okay with talking for the sake of opening a conversation so that people will be welcome to join in a conversation that can help everybody feel better and be more equal.
Absolutely. Most of the time, there is no right or wrong that we're trying to state or prove. We just merely want to talk about something. It's not to prove a point or offer a side either way. And hopefully, you as the listeners feel that we stay as neutral as possible. This is definitely another one that we don't really. I mean, maybe on this, I'm just speaking for myself, but usually. We're pretty open-minded in how we discuss things. I really don't have a preference on this either way. I see, both, bad and good on it. Come see, come saw, whatever. I think for the most part for this, we're just going to be speaking from our own personal experiences and perspectives like we always do. So I wanted to lay that out there so that hopefully we whatever gets said is not an offense to anyone. We actually do know we have a lot of female listeners, and we appreciate them. That's awesome. I never expected girls would care at all about what 3 to 4 guys were saying and the type of topics we cover. But yeah, I mean, whatever. Yeah, it's I'm thankful for it. Let's see. So the topic came up because I was trying to remember why this topic came up, because I actually wrote this in the list. One of us wrote this in the list a long time ago. I think it was because there has been a lot of stuff in the media lately. That term gender equality has come up a lot with respect to...
Yeah, it's definitely become a highlight or a hot topic.
Big time. Strongly in politics with some of the women that have been potential running for president and other political positions. I know I hear it a lot in the fairness in the workplace for pay scales and jobs. I hear it also a lot with how the viewpoint from society seems to be changing for stay-at-home mothers. Anyway, so for all those reasons, I think that's where it came from, and like I said, that's what made us, hey, that sounds like an interesting thing to discuss. Let's sit down and see what we think about it and put together an episode.
Let's throw our 2 cents in there.
Pretty much. That's what all these, what this whole show's about. I mean, it's just, again, to leave you with something to ponder. And if you hadn't thought that much of gender equality before, well, we hope you walk away thinking, oh, damn, maybe I haven't thought about that enough, or hey, that's something interesting to consider. First thing I ran into when I started doing research for this was something I knew nothing about. And I wanted to make this the first thing I shared because I thought this was really cool that somebody probably a lot of people had put this together. There is something called the Global Gender Gap Report. I had no idea there was any type of global gender, any report of any kind. But it is put together by the World Economic Forum, and it was started in 2006. It covers 144 major and emerging economies. It is designed to measure gender equality. And their definition says that they rank countries according to calculated gender gap between women and men in 4 key areas: health, education, economy, and politics, to gauge the state of gender equality in a country. I didn't pull any stats from them or really delve into what kind of information they release and generate from their findings. However, my main reason of mentioning it was just if you want to personally go out and look at some hardcore stats, I think for my research, that seems to be a very good place to start if you don't want to risk the many biased articles that are out there. There's a lot written on this topic. I mean, tons.
A lot of opinion that's just speckled out there that has no substance to it.
That's the problem. It's like a lot of people make really, really good points. A lot of people pull stats. A lot of people list scientific findings or whatever. The problem is that a lot of them are extremely biased for their own reasons. Maybe for their own gain, maybe not. I don't know. But a
lot of people have an agenda.
Yeah, I mean, which we run into with a lot of these topics, right? But this one I found especially difficult to get some sort of scientific data out of, or actual statistical data out of, other than from what I saw Global Gender Gap Report putting out there. And the only stat I did pull from it, which I thought might be of interest, if you guys were curious, it has it broken down in years from 2006 to 2018. Obviously, 2019 isn't over yet, at the time of this recording, isn't over yet, so the stats for that year have not been published. But in 2018, the U.S. ranked, you're going to love this, number 52 out of 144. Not very high.
Wow.
Not quite.
I think Switzerland
it's one of the high ones.
Is like 20.
Yeah.
But right now, in Switzerland, right now, there is a huge march going on in Switzerland and Geneva for women's rights.
Wow. They were one of the highest ones. Most of the highest countries are in Europe.
Yeah.
I noticed. There are quite a few in North America, but you'd have to look at the list. There's a lot. Well, 144, right? But yeah, 52. So I guess that puts us in the top third, maybe, kind of. But not doing so.
Go America.
Yeah, not doing so well there. But I mean, considering our background and where how we structured our society based on early male-dominated culture and religion.
Judeo-Christian influence.
There you go. That's
slavery.
It's not too surprising, and we are only 300 years old or so. So I mean, it's, considering those other countries many of those other countries are a lot older and have had more time to figure out the ridiculousness of our evil ways. Maybe we should be happy that we're at least moving up at 52. I don't know, but anyway. That
We're
was
not at the bottom.
We're not we're not at the bottom. That's right. And they do have a way. Again, I didn't read far enough into this stuff because I didn't want to get too heavy into the stats with this. I don't think that's what we wanted to really present or talk about here today. They do have a very clever way of calculating out a value that is between 0 and 1. And for every single country, based on those 4 criteria of health, education, economy, and politics, to rank a economy area, based on gender equality. You'd have to look into it. It's pretty wild.
Did they present the information in like a Venn diagram format so you can kind of see like where each place falls under which category, or is
the only stat I bothered looking at was the wiki post for Global Gender Gap Report, and that one actually had table, like a spreadsheet listed out there that you could sort by the values too, and you could see all the years from 2006 to 2018, and you could see all the countries that they took part in. You could see all their numbers over those years for that 0 to 1 number, and it's like 0.000, so it takes it out to the thousandths, or is that the 10,000ths? Oh man, I can never remember that. Anyway, takes it out takes it out 3 digits past the decimal. So, and that's how they rate their each country's ranking or score or whatever. So anyway, you're more than welcome to look into that if you're interested in more stats on that. That was about the best place I could find accurate stats too. Everything else just like I said before, kind of agenda pushing from random entities or whatever. Anyway, so to start off this discussion, I figured we could just break up into a few random different places in life where gender equality seems to be playing a role either in the media or in our everyday lives. And the first one I'll throw out there is, I got 3 of them here that are under what I considered society's view on these things and how they might have changed. So for me for this first one I had listed, and I mean, if you guys have others, throw them out there or whatever, we'll just continue adding. I have noticed a change in how society views stay-at-home moms. And I think, and I'm not a stay-at-home mom, nor am I married and have kids, so I don't live with a stay-at-home mom, but I do know a few. And I have, just you get this general poll for how people, and it could be just our geographical area as well, but it seems to me that people I see through social media and people that I'm friends with, and I mean, I don't probably, if it's the same for you guys, whatever, speak up. And that stay-at-home moms, the view of that occupation has changed such that it turned into what I just said, an occupation that is recognized and respected as such. I don't think it used to be that way. When I was a lot younger, I would hear people make a comment that, "Oh, she doesn't work; she just stays at home." Well, she has kids? But yeah. Oh, so she stays at home and has kids. But it seemed like that was more of a negative thing 20, 30 years ago than it is today.
Like they weren't doing anything.
Like they weren't, yeah.
But the weird thing is, though, is that used to be the norm, and then it became not the norm, and now it's become like an occupation, which it wasn't an occupation before, but it was normal. It was expected that women were going to stay home and take care of the kids. And then it was, then that made them sound lazy, and now it's a job.
So another one I had here, society's view change on dual income households, I think plays into what you're saying. When dual income households became acceptable, then it started changing. I think the view started changing from stay-at-home moms being considered lazy or not doing anything. It changed into, wait a minute, no, she's working. She's working her ass off taking care of those freaking kids and the household. So now it's combine that with a dual income household, now it's an occupation that just works from home, basically.
Right.
That and
it generates no revenue.
Well, okay, but then I was going to add to that. Now it has also become, since it became acceptable for the dual income housing deal where the female is making money, a lot of the stay-at-home moms have started businesses, from their houses that they can do, while they're at home with their kids all day, and that has become extremely popular.
Well, a lot of modern day entrepreneurs are women.
Yes,
and women who, when their kids get to an age where they're not quite so 24/7 necessary to be with them, and
when they get into like preschool, elementary school,
when they get into a little bit more independent, and if the woman decides that she wants to stay in that position, a lot of times, we live in a country that's really expensive to live in, especially if you live on the West Coast. even on the East Coast.
Either coast.
It's it really almost takes a dual income to survive nowadays.
Right.
So the people who really suffer the most are the children, because they don't have an immediate family member there to teach them the basic lessons that they need during early adolescence. I think the importance of having a stay-at-home parent, I'll just say parent, someone who is their actual blood relative, to give them those first early year development lessons is extremely important for the next generation of people and your children in general. If you have children and you're just going to hand them off to somebody to raise because you have to work so much, you're not really enjoying or seeing the benefits of having a child and experiencing, bringing a new life into this world. Stay-at-home moms are extremely important. Stay-at-home parents are extremely important. But we also, like I said, we live in a culture where it's almost not an option anymore for people to do that. I mean, if you live in California, the median price of a house is what, $500,000 almost?
Yep, pretty much.
Pretty close.
It's hard to be able to afford for one of the family members, the husband or wife, to be able to stay home and raise the kids. And I think that's something we're losing by not having someone there, whether it's the man or the wife. I don't really feel like I don't feel like it's as important whether it's the husband or wife that does that, but I feel like there has the fact of having, if you're going to have a family, having a family member who can nurture those children, at least until their early adolescence, is super important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I agree.
So you guys agree then that the viewpoint on stay-at-home moms has changed?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. How do you feel about stay-at-home dads?
Personally, I think as long as they have a stay-at-home parent,
Yeah.
whether
I
it's
agree.
the mother or the father,
Yeah.
they just need that.
Do any of you know stay-at-home dads?
So I know a couple. Yeah, and I think and Glenn, that goes back to my original statement. It's like we are in an evolving position in world history where because of gender equality and because of more women going out and getting regular jobs or corporate jobs or degrees and things like that, it's becoming an issue of like, it doesn't necessarily matter to me whether it's the husband or the wife that stays at home with the kids. It's the fact that's the importance of the parent being with the child,
Right.
to give them that nurturing and education and that pre-adolescent developmental skills. That's
Absolutely.
important.
And somebody who actually cares rather than being paid to be there.
Absolutely.
Right.
So
It's the affection, it's that connection, it's that care, it's that family element that they need to develop.
Yeah, and if you look at a lot of countries in the world, a lot of countries give way longer periods for, sorry, I'm not remembering
Maternity
the phrase.
leave?
Maternity leave.
They actually get paternity leave.
They actually get maternity leave.
We get that now too.
Which in a lot of places in America, we don't get hardly anything.
Yeah,
There's very little.
That's changing.
It is changing, but there are some countries that get upwards of a year.
Wow.
And I think that's super important because you're bringing a new human into the world. If you're going to help develop that person to be a productive member of society, what better place to learn those skills than from one of their immediate parents? And I think all of us here are enough in the gender equality agreement that we are all just people and we're just trying to survive, whether it's a husband or wife that fills that position. I don't feel like that's crazy important to be one of the two. I mean, I think in early stages of development of the child, obviously it needs to be the mom, because when children are extremely young, the dad almost doesn't matter. I'm not a dad, but I've got my brother, tons of people. In the first couple of years of a child's life, dad doesn't really matter so much.
The male's not feeding the child.
Exactly.
And females are better at nurturing anyway. Maybe not all females, but in general, it just.
But in general, yeah.
And I never decided if that actually sounds sexist to say or not, but it's just that's the way I've seen it time and time again.
But what does a 1-year-old child need more, mom or dad?
I think mom, but
I know.
Is it at this point in time sexist to say that now?
But
I don't think it is.
As a child, I mean,
we're also coming from the male perspective.
When I was a kid running around, when I got hurt, mommy, it was go to the mom for comfort.
I've seen it reversed though.
I was just going to say, maybe that's because time after time, mommy's the one that's coddling and holding and whatever.
Exactly
But what
the
if
case.
their father?
Okay.
Again, is this a nature or nurture thing? Right? I don't know.
All right.
But that's why I made the statement that, from my experience, I've seen women seem to be better nurturers in general than men do. They're just more compassionate and more caring, and It doesn't mean it's impossible that it goes the other way. I've always,
So
from
I
my
have a
experience.
friend who has 2 kids and a wife, and his kids got sick for a period of time, and at the time he was unemployed, so he took care of the kids through that sickness. And as a result of that, the kids started to call or ask more for him because she was working at that time.
Interesting.
So it's just one of those situations
that.
that the father was there and it was taking care of them. And, just like anybody who's getting taken care of, you like build a certain relationship with that person over that period of time, and that becomes a bond.
All right.
That's the other thing too, is what you just described, mommy. That's, I think, very more typical too of young boys, because a lot of times little girls will go to their father. I've seen that with a lot of my
Because
cousins
of
or
a
whatever.
protective maybe type thing that fathers are more protective of the little girls. Or
Usually, that's in my experience from like my cousins and stuff like that I've seen. Yeah, little girls usually run to their dad, and little boys want mom.
Well, it turns out that his kids are both girls too in that situation, so maybe that's also a factor.
Yeah. I don't know. Anyway, that's a little bit off topic, but there you go. Okay, so going down that same path, though, I wanted to lead into, what do you guys think about the equality of stay-at-home wives?
In what sense?
In the sense that versus stay-at-home husbands. Is that viewed by society as equal? I never noticed stay-at-home husband.
I don't know that necessarily matters. It's the family, the actual family unit that needs to discuss.
We're not talking about
this.
kids. A stay-at-home wife has no kids.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
A stay-at-home husband has no kids. This is just a stay-at-home.
So your conversation is without a family unit.
The first one was
without children.
Yes.
The one we're talking about now.
Yes.
Well, I think in today's society, everybody is pretty much expected to work.
Right.
I don't think there's. I don't know. In the glass ceiling world of life, I don't know. Maybe there's some people that can get off with not doing anything. Maybe the wealthy or the super attractive or whatever
I was
people
to say,
in life.
the first thing I think of when I think of stay-at-home wife is a trophy wife.
Okay.
You're some really wealthy man, and you've got the money to hire.
Wow.
Damn.
That's kind of what it becomes.
I mean, seriously, because what is she doing? Nothing. She's just sitting at home looking pretty, and I mean, I don't understand. If she's not rearing children, she's probably not cleaning house because you probably have enough money to
got the house cleaners. And
you probably have somebody to
got a
take care
maid.
of all that stuff. So so I've always thought that was not an inequality.
Well, for me, it's hard to identify with that role of.
Yeah, because I'm not wealthy enough to have a stay-at-home wife.
I'm not wealthy, and I grew up with a mom who was the principal breadwinner.
Uh-huh.
So for me, in the equality game, I grew up with a mom who worked her ass off 16 hours a day at crappy jobs so she could work overtime just to keep the rent paid. So when I think of equality, it's a little different. It's a little different thought for me because I'm not thinking of like man or woman or this. I think of, in my life, who was the one that kept us alive, kept the family going, kept the mortgage paid, and it was always my mom. Later on, it was my stepdad because they were married, and he was laid off for many years from union auto working. Mm-hmm. And so my mom had to step in and do this thing. But my mom was always the one who took care of everything. She always paid the bills. She always made the mortgage was paid. She always made the electricity was paid. Lights never got turned off because mom made sure it was taken care of. She took care of everything. She was the one in charge of everything. So from an early age for me, I identified a woman in that role. And it wasn't a negative or a positive. It was just
that's how life is.
That's the person who did that for me.
Yeah.
So as I grew up, my mom enforced into me to be a strong person that paid attention and paid your bills on time and did the right thing and worked and made sure everything was taken care of and took care of the ones that you love.
Built integrity.
So it didn't matter to me, I guess, because of my upbringing, whether it was a man or a woman. And when I think of like a trophy wife or a gigolo, maybe is a better description of a guy who doesn't work and lives off some woman. It's a really weird. It's a really weird perspective for me because I can't see myself in a situation like that because I think in today's world it's so expensive to survive. I don't see how any couple can get away with one person not working and one person just hanging out the house unless you're wealthy.
The wealthy,
right?
Yeah.
I think that's the problem, though, is we don't live in a world where that's
an option,
a normal thing. Whereas many, 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 many years ago, most people may not have even had a job at all. Like they worked the land, they make their food and they live off that.
And sell what they can.
And you only work because you have to get some money.
And food.
Like now our idea is like, well, you should just be working.
Well, we've been brainwashed to accept that this money thing is real.
Right.
Yeah,
So
right.
the work is a part of necessity for survival. So if two people in a household don't need to work, then why should the other person work? Like we've built it into a thing where, oh, well, that person's lazy, right? We just throw a bunch of crap on it. But if they don't need to work, why should they be working?
Who doesn't need to work?
That's
People who are
that's the problem.
independently wealthy.
Independently wealthy.
But I mean, if you didn't need to work, would you be working?
No, honestly. Well, I'd be
I'd have
doing
my
a
own,
hobby or
I'd have my own business that would be
You'd
hobby
have it
based.
at-
But
You'd
you
have
wouldn't
a
be
venture.
concerned with making a wage necessarily, right? You wouldn't be super concerned about it because you.
No,
It would be a lot of
I would
freedom.
be focusing my energy somewhere else,
Yeah.
which is kind of the argument for society in general. You have the people that are growing the food and the people that have individual jobs so that you can have the person that produces the art because everything else is taken care of for them.
Right.
Yep.
It's
It's also the same way I've always looked at scientific advancement like that.
Yeah,
It's like, would
same
Isaac Newton have been
premise.
able to do what he did if he didn't have a situation that was somebody was funding him or paying for his other things that he wasn't? Why wasn't he out farming all damn?
Yeah,
you know,
but if you're a trophy wife, or I'm just going to use it for as gigolo because I like the word.
Why's he got to be a slut, dude?
I don't know.
Why's he got to be a prostitute?
Well, if you're a guy and you're doing that, you're probably a little bit of a
It could be the
scumbag.
same thing.
that was sexist.
It could be like a rich cougar or something. Find some
I
young
guess.
guy who's like,
That's-
we're getting married now. You're
don't-
my stay-at-home
That's
husband.
totally
But-
unequal.
But to me, going back to my existence and my where I grew up and the way things were, everybody should have at least a hobby or something that they do
Damn
that
right.
fills their time. And in this world, we have to make money. We have to pay our bills, unless you're independently wealthy. So when I see people, whether it's a guy or a girl, living off somebody or letting somebody else pay their bills, I instantly have a little bit of a negative feeling towards them because I'm jealous. I've never had that option. I've always had to work my ass off. I've been working since I was 15, and I've had one vacation, and I'm in my 40s. You know what I mean? So I've had to, just to survive, work my fingers to the bone. And so I get a little bit jealous when I see people who don't have to do that because of that. And I know that's not right, but when I see guys that do that, I kind of want to go, dude, throw some fucking balls. Get
Yeah,
off
but
your
this
ass
is-
and go do something.
But that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Now you're getting into the gender equality issue.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
100%.
Why don't you why wouldn't you look at the girl the same way?
Because I'm not a girl and I don't know what I don't
But-
understand a woman's world enough to say those sort of things.
You're given all the reasons why your perspective is biased, though, is because
Absolutely.
Of,
I'm
and
trying
that's
to
the
say
world,
those so I can be open.
Exactly, that's the world that we pretty much grow up in, and that's
Absolutely.
why we put all of this basically stigma on people who don't have to do anything. Because we're mad that we
Because we're
can't
jealous
do-
that we can't do
Yeah,
that. Yeah, I'm with you.
exactly.
Yeah,
Pretty
but,
much.
but I mean, for me, I think as being a man in the world, I think like, okay, if you're independently wealthy and you want to be a drunk and you want to goof off, you do things, you're a spoiled brat, I can't, whatever. But I just, the non-productiveness of life is the part that bothers me the most. Whether you do have to work or don't have to work, I feel like if you're not doing something with your life that at least makes you happy, as productive or positive, what the hell are you doing?
Fucking being a slug.
Using air.
Using
air, yeah, and so
Taking
so
my
it's-
air.
So it's a very bigger picture I'm painting, and I don't feel like I have the option to say anything about a woman's position because I'm not a woman, and my position in my life of watching my mother struggle and work her ass off to keep the mortgage paid and keep us fed. I mean, that's a different perspective. I have a ton of respect for women. I have an enormous respect for women who have children who work their asses off and don't have a man in their life doing something because
The
that
single mom,
person,
for sure.
single moms in this world should be applauded every single minute of the day because they are doing something that is beyond hard. If you think paying your own bills is hard, try doing it with a couple of kids.
Yeah.
And single moms do that all day long.
Yeah. I don't know how that works. I barely have enough money
I
to keep
have,
myself
I
afloat.
know. I have more respect for single moms with kids, possibly than anybody else.
I just read an article. It may have been today or yesterday that it across the United States is fairly normal for it to cost between $45,000 and $60,000 to raise a kid
Is that like a per year?
per year.
Well, that's a lot of money. What if you have like 3 kids?
Exactly. So
got no-
it
I've
doesn't
seen- I've seen
double,
families with
but
a whole-
it does go up with
I see.
each one, obviously. But that's for a single mom, like you have to earn at least $50,000 a year to just raise a kid.
Or you got to be really creative with money.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I grew up in a
Find-
household
find
where
deals.
my brother's clothes didn't get thrown away; they got sat on the side until I was big enough to
Yep.
wear them.
Hand-me-downs.
Yeah,
That's how I grew up.
That's how I grew up. You know, so I mean, there's a lot of that going on, but you know, in the equality thing, like I said, I mean, for me, it just like being a man and being a positive person in the world and trying to be things. When I see guys are just getting by or scamming people, I'm like, you're a piece of crap. I feel like that's a person that isn't doing anything productive in life. Whether you're a man or a woman, you're not doing anything productive in life. You know, that's your call. I shouldn't make any sort of assumption about you, but being a man and seeing other men sponge off of women or go the easy route or doing something, that probably makes me madder than seeing a trophy wife.
I think that's more of a personal character issue
Absolutely.
than necessarily a gender equality issue. It's
Absolutely.
just
Yeah.
lazy people, anybody who's sponging off of somebody else and not holding their own weight.
Yeah,
man,
yeah.
That's
and that's more of where that goes to. You know, and again, I don't feel like I can make an honest statement about a single mom other than the observant, the third person view of what they go through and seeing, and my experience with my mom. You know, but that's an enormous task. But we also live in a country that has designed a lot of these problems based on our social and political standpoint. I mean, we do things that make it almost more beneficial for the man not to be a part of the family unit, because if a man is a part of family units, women don't get financial assistance.
divide and conquer.
And that has to play into this in some way or form, because that's the way our culture is living.
It started around the time that slavery was abolished. When the African American family started to compete with these established businesses, they started pushing out agendas to criminalize, arrest, separate, and divide the family. And over the generations, it is carried over and is transcended from just that isolated group into full-on American culture.
And now it's been so many generations through that we don't even question.
Right.
Yeah.
So it started as a defense, a business ploy to beat out competition, and it has drastically affected our culture.
All about money.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But I mean, going back to your question of like, you know, how do we fill in the gender situation of like a stay-at-home wife who doesn't have a job, you know, versus a man who stays at home, doesn't have a job. You know, I think if it's a personal decision within the couple, that's their life, that's their decision. You know, if the wife, you know, I had a buddy that I knew back in high school, and he was kind of a doofus, and he went to college and got a performing arts degree in clarinet. And we were like, boy, that's going to be a multi, you know, unless you're playing with a symphony, what are you doing? You know, and his girlfriend at the time got a genetics degree. So who do you think pays the bills in this family? You know what I mean? She was the smart one who got a real degree, who has a real career, who can really move forward. So guess who became the stay-at-home dad? You know, so
The clarinet player.
the clarinet player. So I mean, but that was their decision as a family unit. So it's not my position to judge them unless I want to personally for some personal agenda that I have. But those things set aside, if a man and a woman are in an agreement, or you know, in the gender roles of a husband and wife or whatever, a couple, and one person decides, hey, I make more money than you do, you don't like your job, why don't you stay home and do this, and we can plan our life, and maybe we, you know, do other things that make our life more complete. But the problem is, in our country, in our culture, it's so expensive to survive that I see it being really hard for anybody to not work. And going back to that equality thing, if we all have to work, Here becomes the biggest issue of the equality. Okay, now we all have to work. Now we're talking about equality in the workplace and women being paid less, men being paid more for different jobs.
All right, that's excellent you brought that up because it's exactly where I was going next. Let's talk about the workplace and pay scales. This one this is probably what I've been hearing most in the media right now is the equal pay issues. And I'm like, the first thing that pops into my head, now, obviously I have my own experience with work environments and the jobs I've had and the places that they have been in. But of all of them, I don't know where in the hell you can work where they can pay a woman less than a man. This concept to me blows me away. I don't know where this happens. And if you guys know of something, yeah, that's why I wanted to present it here. Because how do you get away with that legally? First of all, if you can prove that they are getting paid less, then you can prove it to, I would imagine, you could prove it to authorities that be, and that you could create some sort of backlash for that company that's doing that. But no place I have ever worked do they pay anything but the same for the same classification or job title.
So on this, a lot of these things are based off of an average made over a lifetime career, right? So a lot of these averages...
Which is ridiculous because that has completely nothing to do
Right.
with the actual statistic.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and then what they take into account is a lot of women end up leaving for maternity leave.
That's what I'm thinking, yeah.
So they end up with a period of time where they are not working, they are not generating an income, and it is being factored into their lifetime
yeah. Which is
makings, which brings down their earnings.
Which is a great example of taking statistics and manipulating them to prove your point.
Right.
Which means they're just flat out lying.
Exactly.
I don't even see how it's possible to generalize things that way because
Well,
it
again,
depends on
when the media pushes
specific
out.
job that they're going to be working, right? Because you can't compare jobs at the fast food place with people that are engineers. That's going to be way off. So,
Yeah,
I mean,
but
how
we
do
all
they-
need to make
how
the
do they-
same.
No, but if you
How they
take
find
two-
a way to
if you take two people who are working the fast food joint, you got a guy and a girl both working the drive-through window. Why would they be paid differently? They're not.
both making minimum wage.
They're both making the same amount of money. And so, what I speak to is military, federal government, state government, county government, city government. That's millions and millions of people.
Yeah, but in the private sector, though, they're going to pay people
whatever they agree to work for.
exactly,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
you
the
can
private sector is way
negotiate
different.
that. So it's quite easy that somebody would be getting paid for the same job over the same period of time, more or less money.
Okay, so now you're correct because in private industry they can pay anybody whatever they want, right? But if this were such a widespread problem and that they know about it, that means in order to know about it, that means they would have to find out what everybody's being paid, and then they would have to say, look at all these females are paid less for the same job. If that was actually the case, I think more, and what I'm alluding to is I think more is the case of the way the statistics are coming from what Glenn was saying. Because if that were the case and they could pull, let's say they pulled Intel. I don't know why I thought of that company, just whatever, Intel. And they pulled all the engineers and they said, look at all these women are being paid less for doing the same job. You don't think somebody would go to the newspaper or and they would.
They have, yeah.
And they have years ago when this was an issue, which I don't believe it's an issue now.
I think I was just reading something about it at Google recently.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah,
have to look
yeah. There
into
was a
that.
big issue with Google that women were being paid less for the same positions. It still exists in the corporate world.
crazy.
Yeah, it may not exist
I mean-
much in the state government type employment world.
Government period, including military.
Exactly.
Everybody's
because-
paid the same for the same classification
Absolutely,
and
but-
years in and whatever.
Exactly. But when you go to the private sector, it's a completely different
Yeah,
ballgame.
it's not regulated like
It's
that.
not regulated
and
at
I
all.
understand that too. But man, that's crazy. How could that continue? So then, if that is still happening in large corporations, that people are not making a big enough stink about it, and I guess that's what the whole point of putting in the media is now. Is that
Well,
they're
the
trying
Google
to make
the
that.
Google thing was an issue because that was just recently,
Yeah.
and a lot of women who work for Google spoke up. And I don't know. I think there was a lawsuit or something that was filed. There was more that went on. They went to bat against Google to prove that women are being paid less there.
Right.
Interesting.
And you're talking Google. That's
Yeah,
not like
which is somebody who should be on the forefront of that
absolutely.
kind of crap.
You would think so.
I wonder. I'd have to look more into the details of that because, again, just like Glenn showed a perfect example of how statistics can be skewed, I wonder if that.
Well, statistics can be skewed in whoever's direction they want.
True. So
with
how
type of
did
the
how did the values, the data come from the Google thing?
Right. In this case, they'd have to be looking at individuals and comparing them.
I mean, that would be the only way that you could actually make that claim, right?
Right.
So I'm like, wow, that would really surprise me that they would allow that kind of stuff to happen. It's like somebody like Google.
But you look at a lot of the private sectors. Like when I was younger, I worked at a lot of like auto dealerships, and it was mainly a male-dominated world. You had mechanics, you had salesmen, managers, whatever. So the women that worked there, they were always like secretaries, jobs like that. And it was almost like back then it was like, and it's more so now that, there's an equality of like, more women can do the same job that men do. And I believe that's absolutely true.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah, me too.
But we're still in an era in American culture where, especially in the private sector, where a lot of those jobs, these companies will hire women, and the women only seem to get hired for specific jobs.
Yeah.
They can't apply for all the jobs. And I think that's one of the inequalities that women are fighting for right now that I see is that, like, you take the private sector, and let's just say a woman goes to apply at a company that has maybe 40 employees, and maybe they're selling cars. Let's just throw it out there. They've got 10 salesmen, 10 mechanics, a couple of managers, a couple of secretaries. Oh, you're a woman, you're coming to apply. Well, we already have a secretary. That's a sexist thing to say. Well, maybe that woman is not applying to be a secretary. Maybe she's applying to be a salesperson.
Why would they say that if she's applying for a specific position?
You
but
you don't know. It's a private sector. So I think there is still an identity that women fill certain positions, and I think women are still fighting to be accepted to apply for every position in the private sector.
But the other thing is, you can apply for any job you want, but that doesn't mean that you're going to be considered
get
for
hired.
that position.
Yeah.
Right. Because the person hired may think that that's a guy's job, and so he's not going to look at the women.
Yeah. And if you look at Middle America,
Well-
which is a very white, male-dominated America, and a woman comes in and he's got 5 salesmen at his car dealership. This woman comes in and she wants to apply for a job as a salesperson, and he says, well, we've already got a secretary. That's pretty freaking sexist.
Absolutely.
And that's a very common thing that happens. And I think that's one of the arguments that women who are standing up for equality, that's exactly the prime situation that they're standing up against.
Right. Now, what about industries like construction, where on the job sites you have mostly men? I mean, there are the occasional female employee that works out in the field, but
Yeah. But that's another, and I look at me growing up in the Midwest and how the industrial worlds that I worked in, that's a prime example. If a woman walked up to a job site and said, I want to work, the guy's going to, a lot of, and I'm not saying all because you can't say that you know the all to any answer question, but a lot of men in that position are going to go, what are you here for, little lady? And that by itself, that statement by itself is exactly the reason women are fighting for equality.
okay.
That response.
In this same situation, in the construction industry, I've been on a lot of job sites. I've worked a lot of jobs. There are situations where you get in and you have to move some heavy shit. That are they? I don't know. What is the difference physically? I mean, how much on average can a woman lift safely versus the average men?
I was reading some studies that the military has done on this, because as it stands right now, and we'll get into the military in a second here. Women are all positions are open to females in the military, in all branches of the military, from combat to special forces to anything. Some of the areas of special forces they have not been able to get into because they simply cannot test high enough. Now, is there conspiracy there that somebody's keeping them out? I don't know, maybe. But some of the studies that have been run that I was reading about have proven time and time over and over again that women can physically not do the same things that men do. For example, when a 250-pound dude gets shot in the abdomen and is on the floor and can't get up, there aren't many women who are in the team, in the military, able to go over there, pick him up, and carry him out. Should a wounded soldier need to be removed, and they've shown examples of that a lot. So there is not all of them, right? Because there are some burly ass chicks out there that can carry anybody, right?
Sure.
But a majority of them are not that. And any woman who wants to be in the military may be of any size. Well, let's say she decides she wants to be a Marine, an infantry, or pick one. I don't know. She's not going to be able to carry the person out, so you're never going to win that battle.
Well, I partially agree with that. And the reason I'm going to say this is I will go back to the construction industry. I'm a small guy. 5'10", weigh 135 pounds.
I hear you on that.
Small guy. I've worked mostly construction most of my life. I've worked in jobs where I had to move heavy motorcycles, push 1,000-pound motorcycles. I was the tiny runt of the business. And a lot of times the big burly guys screwed with me. Oh, you little weakling. Oh, and I'm like, yeah, I'm the one. I'm still pushing this 1,000-pound motorcycle on this lift, still doing this thing because I'm smart enough to figure out a way to make this happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think when it comes to those jobs, that it's unfair to immediately assume a woman can't do that because of her physical stature, because I personally don't have the physical stature to do a lot of things that I've done, but I've been smart enough to figure out how to do that.
That's a great point.
So I think in the equality world, we should at least give everyone a chance to fail.
I agree.
The opportunity to try.
I absolutely agree with that.
I think that's the one thing that seems like it's when it comes to the gender equality, a lot of people are, well, you can't do that, you're a woman. And there's a lot of women out there who can do a lot.
Absolutely.
And lift a lot, move
Absolutely.
a lot, grunt their way through things just like a small guy could do. And I think that the bigger problem that I see is that we're not allowing people the opportunity to fail.
Fair enough. I like that answer.
Interesting. Yeah.
I do too. It's the assumption, like
Yeah.
before. The
Yeah.
assumption that they can't
Totally.
do it just because. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I said, classifying somebody just because they're a woman, you can't do this job. You don't know that woman can't do that job, And I've said this time and time again in my shop. I have a really hard time hiring helpers in my shop. I'm an artist. I run a sculpture business, and I have a hard time hiring people. The worst people that I hire are men under the age of 40. They're scared of tools. They're very delicate little flowers. They're snowflakes. They can't seem to do anything. I mean, I just want to punch them in the head half the time because I'm like, look, dude, come on. You know who are the best employees that I hire? Lesbian women.
No shit.
Absolutely. The best employees I've had in my business have been lesbian women. They are ready to put the freaking boot to the pedal and make something happen. And they've got gusto. They've got reason. They've got something to prove.
Yeah,
they're motivated.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
And they're like, they're not going to fail. And no matter who you are, if you have the attitude that you're not going to fail, you're a valuable asset to anybody's business. And so I'm willing to give anybody the opportunity. And that's been my success so far, really. I mean, one of my favorite employees I've had, a lesbian lady who was close to my age. We grew up in the same kind of mentality of life in the world. And she was a go-getter, man. And she came in there like, what are we doing? What are we lifting? What are we moving? What are we hammering out in here in the metal shop today? And I was like, you rock. I love you. I've hired 10, 30-year-old guys that could never do what she did. So for me, I've seen a lot of those boundaries pushed away. So I'm willing to at least let somebody come in and fail. And I think that everybody deserves the opportunity to have that chance.
So let me put a little different perspective on that because I've heard something that came up earlier. You guys mentioned maternity leave and paternity leave. I've heard a few circumstances in the engineering world wherein people don't want to hire or are less likely to hire a female engineer because of the concern that she will go out on one or multiple maternity leaves. Some work environments, especially in private industry companies, simply do not want to take the risk of losing somebody for months at a time to a maternity leave. If you happen to be a bleeding technology, high, fast-paced company producing product for retail consumer market or otherwise tight contracts that are very, very time-based, you cannot lose an employee, especially not one who's managing a project, for a month or even a week at times. And the risk that you take when you hire somebody who could go out and have a kid for 6 months on paternity leave or 3 months or 4 months or whatever could be detrimental to the company and to the project. So you avoid hiring females. I don't know how true that is now. I know that paternity leave for males is a growing thing now. So you kind of have that same risk with males as well, but something to be considered. It is calculated. when I'll never forget, I went on one interview, it was actually within Intel, and at the end, interview was like a 5-hour long interview with a lunch. And at the last person I interviewed with was the supervising manager for that team that the job was for. And one of the things, he asked me a question, and then I gave an answer, and he said, stop, that's not what I'm asking. When I'm considering hiring you, I'm considering hiring a tool. You're an asset. I don't want your friendship. I'm not hiring you because you're a cool guy. I'm not hiring you because you're a buddy. You're an asset to my project, to my group, and to this company. That's what I'm looking for. Okay, fine, fair enough. Makes sense to me in a logical sense. So if I'm looking at that same situation in a logical sense, and I were in his shoes, why would I want to risk somebody who's more likely? And again, maybe the girl will never have kids, right? But I do know that this goes through people's heads depending on what kind of company they run. Anyway, you said the maternity thing, and that made me think of that story.
Well, I agree, and there's this old adage that a lot of employers like somebody who's married with kids because they need to come to work
because they have to work.
Right.
They like males who are married with kids.
Yeah.
Yes,
People that have a mortgage.
that's right. Because typically that mentality comes from the breadwinner mentality, right?
Yeah.
You know that dude has got to work because he's got a wife and kids sucking up all his funds, so he's got to keep showing up.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily the same with the girls.
No, I agree, and I mean that. I guess depending on what your business is or what your
Absolutely. This is that's very
what industry you're in or whatever.
That's why I said where I've heard
Yeah.
that before was consumer electronics, engineering, that kind of stuff.
I mean, I can see that as being a view, but
But it could be in a lot of industries.
It could be in a lot of
It could be a
industries, too, yeah.
secretary. How
Yeah.
depends on how much you
but you
value.
also and I agree with that, and a certain degree, but. You also got to remember, too, like, just because you can hire a guy who isn't going to be on maternity leave doesn't mean that dude doesn't have a drug problem.
that's a whole nother
And it
thing,
doesn't
too.
mean that he's not going to get sick at some point
That's
or get in an
true.
accident. I
Get
just remember
cancer,
how common
anything.
one thing is versus another thing.
I would say having kids is more common than cancer.
Or an accident or some other kind of thing that might take you out for a month.
True. I mean, so again, but which is a higher risk if you're calculating? Because keep in mind, some of these companies are actually running risk factors on the
Yeah,
people
yeah, I
that
would
they
imagine
hire.
they-
If you're going to
Absolutely.
drop, a $200,000 a year, $100,000 a year on an individual, I mean, you're like that guy said. I'll never forget that shit, dude. You're buying a tool, literally, just like just like this recorder that we're using.
Right.
It's like I bought that damn thing for this purpose, right? I didn't buy it to.
So if it
cuddle with it.
if it breaks down,
I thought you picked it for pretty lights.
Yes, I did. It's got a lot of lights on it too.
He does cuddle with it, though.
There's kind of lights, but I can see that. I can totally understand that perspective, and I don't know if there's a way to argue one way or another with that.
I'm not. Yeah,
type
I'm not
of
trying to prove a point with that. I'm
yeah.
just saying that if you are in a position that you have to calculate a risk factor for an employee for a tool that you're buying, that's why you go with the Snap-on versus the Craftsman. Or I don't know. Pick another analogy.
In this case, the guy versus the female.
Maybe, if you're, I guess it depends on how you're looking at it. Now, what if it's a female supervisor and she's like, I don't care if you go out on paternity leave, I'll fight for you and keep it. But I've also seen some cutthroat female supervisors too that would fire the girl for doing that. So it's like,
absolutely.
yeah, I don't know, man.
Is it a position that she can be, and then if they step out from maternity leave, is it a project that needs to be replaced, or will their position need to be replaced to complete the project? Then are they going to be able to step back in, or is their job gone?
Who knows, man? They might even lose their job. And that's something I don't know that any amount of gender equality pushed out to society can change. It's a simple fact. If you want to have kids, you're going to have to go. Period. You're not going to be working. I mean, maybe you can work from home sometimes, but what?
Yeah,
if
but I mean, you got to go. You have to give birth.
Yeah, I mean,
You can't be at work that day.
No, so I mean, you're at least at the very least going to take a month off. I mean,
Yeah.
and there are plenty of jobs where you cannot take a month off. As a matter of fact, I don't know many people who can take a month off.
Right.
Maternity leave or illness, serious illness, is about the only thing I've ever heard of where people take, unless you're a government worker, unless that you can take a whole month off and still have your job when you get back.
But I mean, I could see that from like a startup perspective as well.
Yeah.
Where you've got like a small team of
Yeah.
people who are doing something, and if somebody's out for 6 months or 6 weeks, it kills the project, destroys.
You know
the
how many
business.
startups there are out there?
Absolutely. I mean, I can see that as a perspective for that situation, but I think in the bigger picture of the equality, going back to like equal pay or equal opportunity.
Sure,
And I
sure.
think for me, when I think of gender equality as far as like a work environment is concerned, going back to what I said earlier, I think everybody deserves the opportunity to fail. The opportunity to try.
And that's a noble thing to say, but if it were my company, yeah, I'm not interested in paying somebody to fail.
Yeah, but
Flat out.
Yeah, but I can tell you right now, from owning a company, every single person you hire
Fails
fails.
to some degree.
It's something.
That's something.
You're going to hire 30 people to get one person that's half-ass good.
Oh, man. Hard
That's
to find
just-
good help, huh?
That's just the way it is. So if you can get a week out of this person, 6 months out of this person, you're winning. To find a good employee is so hard to do because they're not vested in your business like you are. They don't care. It's
yeah,
just
that's
a
the
job.
other thing, too. Is it's just you never get.
It doesn't matter if this fails. It doesn't matter. They were looking for a job when they found this one. They'll be looking for one tomorrow. So you're never going to get that devotion from an employee, whether it's a man or a woman, that you want as the 100%. It's your business is the way it is, and that's the way that a lot of the private sector works. So that's why, to me, when I think about hiring people, I think it seems silly that you wouldn't just let anybody who could try give them the opportunity.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, let's jump too because we're running a little short on time. How about education? And I'll just present this question as this because I don't want to get too far off into this one. I don't think there really is that much to get too far into. As far as education is concerned, do you guys feel that there is any gender inequality today in education? I think all educational opportunities and pathways are open to both genders. But what do you guys think?
I think it depends. I think it depends on what country you're in, what part of the world you're in, because there are lots of countries in the world where certain people, especially in like third world situations, where people are coming in trying to give people education, bring people into school. And I have friends who are doing it right now in Korea, in South Korea, and they're trying to go into small villages and open schools and give people the opportunity to learn. And a lot of these communities, certain members of the community, whether it's a man or a woman, it's almost like a prerequisite. They have to do this. They have to go work in the field. They have to do this. They don't have the opportunity for an education. And a lot of these communities, the men are out working a hard labor job. So a lot of the developing countries, the women or the younger girls are the ones who actually have the opportunity to go to school. And so a lot of developing countries are having more women have the option to go to school if a school is available for them. To do something.
That's definitely a valid point. I was only thinking in terms of the U.S., but now that you mention that, that is definitely something to be fighting for as far as gender equality
And
is concerned.
that's more of a world.
I see, yeah.
equality
I didn't even think
situation.
that big. I was just thinking here in the U.S. Okay, good. I like that.
But I don't think that anyone should be denied the opportunity for education.
No, and the first thing I thought was again, I was just thinking for America. I was thinking, who the hell is denying a female from going to getting any education? I
Right.
don't think that
If you can
exists.
afford your education, you can get it.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, the way I see it, all the damn colleges want is your check, your paycheck.
Yeah.
So I mean, they'll let anybody in for anything unless it's some high prestigious school, which of course then they want more money and they want you to have all these grades and decorations, yada yada yada. But if you're going to your local state college or whatever, I mean, unless you've got really shitty scores,
Yeah.
But I mean, anybody gets in who can foot the bill. They want your money.
Well, that's what happens when you turn education into a business.
Correct.
Yeah.
that's a
California's
very,
good at
very
that.
good
We've
point,
got
yeah.
lots and lots of colleges to take
But,
put you in debt.
But when we've had this conversation before when we talk about future of the world and the population and stuff, where there is a general consensus that as more women become more educated and get higher paying jobs, there's actually studies out there that think that the general population of the world will go down because more women are educated and working and not just having children.
I hope so, man.
I mean, there's a
like
theory,
idiocracy.
a theory about vaccinations that has a similar type of thing is that if there's more of a chance that their kids will live because of vaccinations, they actually have less kids because they don't have to worry about not having any. Like their kids, there's more of a chance of their kids being able to make it to a decent age, so they don't have to have as many kids.
The survival
I think
rate's
that's
higher.
more a case of the necessity for physical labor in the household. As time progresses, we do not need as much. There's less of a drive. Plus, we have birth control now that has reduced the family size. I I see that less as a of an education or.
But
No, it's just
but in the developing countries, though, that's not exactly the case. And in a lot of the developing countries, it is the women and the younger girls who are being afforded the opportunity for education because the men have to go out and do the manual labor jobs. Yeah. So the girls have nothing else to do. And if schools are being provided in those environments, now they're getting an education. Yes. So in a lot of the developing countries of the world, I know this just because I have a really close friend who does a lot of work in Asia and specifically in Korea, and they go into villages where they're trying to provide school and education opportunities for children, and most of the children who are able to take those opportunities are young girls because the men are being sent out to work the field, to do this, to work the manual labor jobs, so they're not getting educations. So these women and the young girls are the only ones who are able to take those opportunities. That's not America. Yeah, but right. America is a very small percentage of the global population of people.
Oh, yeah.
And so when I look at this, I think of the gender equality of that scenario and all these younger girls being able to have these educations. At some point, those girls are going to be the ones who have the degrees.
They're going to be in power.
They're going to be in power. Mm-hmm. Just like
girls, you're already on your way to taking over.
And, we talked about
in some places,
and in some, but we talked about this before. Even when we talked about the episode where we talked about mail order brides, environments where there are a larger population of women than men, and those women are filling the jobs of men because those men aren't there.
That's right. All those women are supposedly very, very educated, and not able to find good mates where they're from because their men are out doing other things that aren't along those lines.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the equality thing, the world is shifting in general, and whether we, as an American or a Western culture, what we feel about it isn't necessarily the end-all, be-all of the conversation because we have an entire world population that's changing and evolving.
True, and that's why, that opens up a huge can of worms. That's why I typically stay with U.S.-based stuff because I don't really know a whole lot about all the global topics. But yeah, I mean, you're right. It gets vastly different.
But I've also heard lots of studies here in America where the general population at most college campuses is a larger percentage of women.
I've heard that too. Unfortunately, it wasn't in mine.
That means I need to go back to school.
Yeah.
Right.
Major in something where there's lots of girls. Okay, what was the next one I had here?
But in that same sentence, though, in the same regard of that, a lot more women are, and this is one thing, even in the welding industry, a lot more women have more patience to perform high-level jobs that require thinking and precision. When I hire people to do welding or I teach welding, I have more success with my female students because they're willing to put in more effort to think through a problem and spend more time solving a problem, whereas men get frustrated quicker and are more willing to walk out of a situation because they didn't succeed as quick as they thought they would.
I can see that. An interesting note about another thing I read with the military. They made a claim. I can't remember what branch it was, but that one of their studies showed that an untrained male is more accurate with a firearm, multiple different firearms, than a trained female. And I was like, wait a minute. Hold on a second. I know that's a pretty bold statement to say, but that was something that I read off of that. Interesting. Which is counter to what you just stated, right? But I don't know. Again, I didn't check the source on that one. It was off of
I mean, just from my personal experience of hiring people and dealing with people, it seems like, and like again, going back to the teaching, because I teach welding classes, it seems like my female students are willing.
I've seen that too. They'll usually take a safer approach.
A safer approach, and they're more willing to put into the longer effort to solve a problem than most men are. Mm-hmm. Men are really quick to, like, if they don't come up with a solution, they either blow it off, walk away, get frustrated, and then they don't come to a conclusion at all. Whereas the women that I've worked with, they're more willing to put a long-term effort into a solution to something.
How do you guys feel about the current state of gender equality in politics? It seems to me we have a lot of female politicians these days, including several that are potential president candidates. I mean, I don't know. I've felt recently that we've very much overcome that in our country. Again, just for the U.S., I don't really follow world politics too much. But
personally, I don't know. Politics are politics.
Yeah, I don't
They're,
really think it matters. Penis
don't
or
either.
vagina.
Yeah, no,
It's just like you're a politician,
Yeah.
and you're
Right.
probably a scumbag no matter what.
it's for me. I choose or who I vote for based on their stances and what they actually support and their voting history.
Yeah.
I actually go and look and see what they have voted on in the past and how they swing.
Yeah.
And if it's so, gender doesn't matter to me at all when it comes to politics.
Yeah.
They're all puppets anyway.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think all politicians are scumbags, so it doesn't matter if they're men or women. But an interesting thing though is when you're talking about how they vote, a lot of people get bad publicity because they'll say, "Oh, this person voted against this," or they voted against
Yes,
that.
yes.
A lot of times, the bigger story is there was something added to that bill that was completely
absolutely.
unnecessary, and they voted against it because of that little addition to
It's
that
not
bill.
the no votes; it's the yes votes. I want to know
yes.
what they passed.
Right?
I don't care what they pushed out. I want to know what they voted for.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a good way of looking at it. Yeah,
So-
but in the general aspect of like in politics where it's men or women, I don't know. I mean, you're going to have a really hard time convincing me that any politician is a good human.
Yeah. Yeah.
And on that note, personally, I'm not going to vote yes for a female president just because she's female.
Yeah,
Absolutely,
Well,
yeah.
unfortunately, a lot of people will, but
Yeah,
yes.
and that's
So-
and that's a horrible thing and I saw that with the last election when we had
Hillary.
the Hillary and Trump thing. All these a lot of people are like, I'm voting for Hillary. It's time a woman did it. And I'm like, but is that the right person?
That the woman.
Is
Right.
that the woman that you want there?
Yeah.
And again, it's for me, and I'll be as gender equality as I can in this conversation. A politician to me is a politician,
Right.
And it's gonna be hard pressed to convince me that politician is on my side, whether they're a man or a woman. Doesn't seem to matter to me at all.
Nope.
It's a politician.
They are, yeah, no.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's a greasy handshake behind a fucking steel mill in the middle of the night.
Nasty. Is that what they're calling it these days?
That's what I'm calling it.
That's what makes you feel.
I do not follow sports of pretty much of any shape or form. However, so I don't know the answer to this question. If you guys know, throw it out there.
I'm sure we don't.
Yeah, I don't think any of us are really that big. Well, Glenn is into basketball.
I grew up playing.
Are
sports.
there any women playing in NBA, NFL, NHL, MLB? I know
They have a women's.
they have the women's division, but will
Right.
they let the women play with the men?
Nope, they have a different ball size. There's
Okay, wow, I didn't know that.
seriously
different ball size?
Yeah,
For what? What
for like
sport?
basketball?
They have a different ball size?
Yes.
Dude, those chicks are huge. They don't need a different ball size.
Yeah. No. The ball is like 2 inches smaller.
I did not know that. Okay. But they don't have any women playing with the men
Nope.
yet. Okay.
They have a women's league and a men's league.
And for me, I feel like
Other than like in golf, they've got men and actually
no,
in the
that's men and women separated.
no. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah, and I feel like when it comes to the sports thing, there should be a separation of men's sports. and
I'm
women's
inclined
sports.
to
I
agree
feel-
with you there,
Now, how
just
can you
because
say
there is
that?
a physical difference between the two. If you are having open competition, pitch like against like. I don't want to see some dude wrestle a bunch of girls.
Yeah, and I also
You know,
don't want.
if-
I
But
don't
what about golf?
Golf? What about golf?
Why not mix them in golf? Like, I mean,
That I don't
You know what?
understand.
That's all mechanics. I don't see why that needs to be separated. But in a game like basketball, when you have a serious height and weight difference,
Or like NFL, where you have
Yeah.
a physical.
Sure.
I mean, that's that's a
I don't understand.
super
If you have-
contact
wait,
sport.
Wait. If you have two people, guy and girl, that are 6'10", what the hell's the difference?
How many women are 6'10"?
I don't know. I thought those women basketball players are just as big as the guys. They're not. Oh,
No,
well,
they're way
fuck,
smaller.
I told you I don't follow this stuff, so
Way
I assume
smaller.
they were the same heights.
No, way smaller.
Really?
I mean, 6'4", 6'5" is pretty common. A 6'10" woman's pretty uncommon.
Well, okay then.
Women's basketball. I mean, there's some amazing athletes in women's athletic worlds. I mean, look at somebody like Serena Williams.
I have no idea
She's
who that is.
absolutely amazing. She's an absolutely astonishing athlete, but she's in a women's sport. She plays in a women's sport, and I don't know. I don't have an explanation or an answer for one or the other. But I think of like full contact sports like NFL.
right?
I don't see it being, I don't know, the right thing to do to have a woman hit by a 300-pound lineman.
But we can put them in combat.
Well,
that's fair.
That's I don't know. I think that's
They're
a
not-
different
I don't see how it's any
conversation.
different personally.
I see
Well,
it.
they're
I
large,
see it being
a lot of
different.
I guess
combat
one
is
is shooting,
is
you're not
shooting bullets,
not
right?
hand, but
Yeah.
it does get to hand on hand.
It could, but then you probably go into knives, so you're still got a
Ooh.
weapon. And
Yeah.
it's still pretty dangerous.
So we should put together a co-ed sports team. I mean, like at
I mean,
work,
it'd be interesting if there are athletes that are at a certain level where they could compete versus the opposite gender to have maybe like a certain
So
like
I have,
special
I have-
like special league or a special point in time where they
Maybe
do
a
that because
championship.
they do even for football teams put different teams together to build teams to go against each other using like most valuable players or whatever.
Sure.
What about soccer? I mean, they're kicking a ball and running. I don't understand. What would be the difference between they're kicking a ball and running? They're not physically contacting.
there's
I
a
mean,
difference,
they do, but
between
Soccer is a
males
lot
and
more
females.
physical than you think it is.
Yes, and there's also a
Pretty
difference in
physical.
center of gravity and balance between the male and female forms.
all right.
For my work, we do a recreational softball league, and it's a co-ed league. And there's stipulations in your like batting order. It has to alternate men, woman, man, woman, man, woman.
Okay.
You can't stack both up. And now if there is one of the subsidiary rules, if you have a woman removed for a penalty or something, and so she can't come up to bat, unless there's another female to sub in, a male has to step out to keep the batting order.
Man, you guys have taken taking that to the next
Right.
level there.
But at the same time, if a man steps out, it can still go. It can go female female, but it can't go male male.
Oh,
Interesting.
that's not equal.
It's not.
That's favoritism.
But it's also implying that the male has the advantage in that situation.
Interesting. Okay, let's see.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a hard conversation because I think in a non-contact sport like golf, what would be the difference?
The only difference I can see is that they would be saying men are stronger, so therefore they can hit further.
No, but if it's like golf, all you have is par, right? You have
Exactly.
strokes under par or strokes over par.
Yeah. Whereas like in NFL, and I always go back to NFL because hockey, soccer, and NFL are contact sports. And if you've never played sports, you
Basketball
probably
is
don't
too.
understand it. Yeah, basketball is too. But if you've never played sports, you don't understand that. Soccer is a very contact sport.
Oh.
Getting kicked in the shin, getting kicked in the balls, getting kicked in the fucking leg, getting kicked in the chest, getting kicked in the face. That happens in soccer all the time.
Okay.
I mean, I played soccer a little bit when I was a kid. It's a rough sport. And you don't have near the pads that you have in NFL or football.
Let's get some lacrosse going.
Yeah, so there's I don't know. I feel like from playing sports, I can understand a separation of women's sports and men's sports. But in certain non-contact sports, like again going back to golf, I don't really see why you couldn't be co-ed.
Interesting. Okay, let's see. The last one I had here, I guess we're going to go out on because we're already well over our time, but I feel like we got to go this last one because this is close to heart. Let's talk about dating and courtship.
Oh my god,
Downward
Because-
spiral.
Yeah.
we just went from medium to freaking bad here.
Yeah, well, it's going to be a touchy one, but let's see here.
That's a rough one.
Tell me about it. I live it all the time. This one frustrates me the most out of the gender inequalities that still exist in our society today. I am still perplexed by the mentality, and even some of the strongest feminist girls I know still will completely separate themselves from that mentality when it comes to what the opposite gender should be doing for them. And it frustrates the hell out of me. I do find over the course of my life there have been more women that have been willing to pay or at least split bills for like a first date or a second date or whatever. And that one's always frustrated the hell out of me. It's like, wait, why are the guys expected to pay the full bill?
I think
for-
that's more traditional.
Yeah, that's a holdover from
It definitely is.
male,
Yeah.
Being the only one working.
right, breadwinner sort of deal.
Yeah. From
It
courting, if you will.
Absolutely. But it also, that kind of stuff also stretches into mannerisms. Why are we still holding doors open for girls?
I hold doors open for everybody.
I do too. And
me too.
I also know quite a few girls that say they don't like it when people do that. However, it is still ingrained in our society. And if genders are going to be considered equal, then those things shouldn't exist. Unless you're going to do it for everybody, which, like you said, I do it for everybody too.
I do it for
but,
everybody.
Yeah. But some people...
Especially if there's elderly people behind.
Sure. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's a whole other story. But I have had situations where people will look at me like, wait, why didn't you hold the door open with that girl? First of all, I didn't see her.
I don't
why-
know her. You're dating her, not me.
Yeah. Why didn't you get in there and hold the door open? Those kind of things still exist, and they do still kind of bug me. The other thing was, I had something else here.
No, he lost his
I
notes.
lost my place here. I think a lot of it too has to do with nature versus nurture, or rather nurturing and how we raise people. Because I think a lot of those ideals come from how we're raising our daughters or girls in the society. And
Well, sure, but that's example. You set an example. Your parents set an example for you of how the social structure is supposed to be adhered to, and we try to emulate.
yeah, absolutely. And I think it stretches further into what capacities girls have and hold in society. I feel like if more people focused on pushing their daughters into the sciences or the same kind of a lot of the stuff that they push guys into instead of dolls, maybe Legos or I don't know, something along those lines where you're giving them a constructive outlet that induces brain development, intellect development, as opposed to just the nurturing side is important too, and that's why dolls are an important toy. But at the same time, I don't know. I wonder how much is affected by how we raise our daughters, essentially, and how that plays out further.
Well, I mean, that's a prime example. You look at dolls versus toy car. I mean, and I think it's probably still pretty widely acceptable to give a 2-year-old daughter for Christmas a doll and a 2-year-old son Legos or
So we are assigning them gender roles and
we're assigning
raising them into them as they develop.
But that's how our culture has been doing it for a very long time.
Sure.
I don't think it's crazy to give your 2-year-old daughter Legos instead of a doll. I have several friends who have daughters that are
even girl
my age
Legos.
that don't give their daughters dolls at all unless they ask for them.
yeah.
They give them other things as gifts and other things to stimulate their mind or make them more. Glenn and I, we've talked about this before. In our education system, we're not teaching people
Critical thinking.
And so when you go back to those sort of examples, you're not giving somebody critical thinking as a gift or a tool. You're immediately imposing this ideology of a cultural stand that maybe the Western world has made, where your 2-year-old daughter gets a doll for Christmas. Maybe she doesn't want a doll. If you know that person, it's your child, and you're reading them, and you're in touch with them, and you're communicating with them, what they want. And then maybe they don't want a doll. Everybody's different. Maybe your 2-year-old daughter wants Legos. Give her Legos.
Honestly, I have to find it very weird that parents would give their little kid a baby.
Right?
Well, it's conditioning.
It is. That's absolutely.
I mean, but is
conditioning.
it? I mean, if it wasn't obviously conditioning, I think it's a weird thing. So I mean, they almost have to know that they're conditioning the kid.
Absolutely.
But otherwise, it's really weird to give
it's
a little
very
girl
traditional.
a
Tradition
baby.
is what. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very traditional in the Western
Conditioning and
culture.
tradition kind of go together.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer to that. I think it's more of an individual thing. Like I've got a friend of mine who has a daughter. She wants zombies for Christmas.
Nice.
That's awesome.
She keeps telling her dad that she's like, when she grows up, she's going to be a zombie killer. So he buys her zombie toys, and
great.
he bought her a crossbow.
He's been letting her watch Walking Dead too much.
Yeah. And so that's what she wants. And I think that instead of imposing and pushing these things onto your children, like, oh, you're a girl, you need a doll. Well, what if that girl doesn't want a doll? Maybe you should be a better parent and understanding and reading your child's interests.
Whoa. You want people to actually be like in touch
Parents,
with
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and know those things. And because if your 2-year-old daughter wants to have a doll, that's fine. If your 2-year-old son wants to have a doll, that's your call. I mean, it's action figures are dolls, aren't they? When I was a kid, my brother and I had G.I. Joes, the original 16-inch G.I. Joes.
They were the size of Barbies.
Yeah, they were the size of Barbies.
Yeah.
Except we were playing in the dirt, winning a war.
Yeah.
Those aren't dolls, though. Those are action figures.
Action figures.
Exactly.
Yes.
And that's what you term them, but
Just like when we become adults, they're graphic novels, not comics
Right,
anymore.
exactly.
Right.
yeah. And it's just a terminology, but but again, and Glenn, you pointed out perfectly. I'm like, yeah, people should be better parents and reading their children, because if you have a daughter who's into building stuff or playing with Legos or this or that, don't give her the injustice of giving her a doll and trying to force your tradition on her. She's an individual, and if she has an interest in something, like my buddy, he's like, dude, she likes zombies. She wants to kill zombies. I give her zombie toys for Christmas. She loves it. That's what makes her happy. That's a good parent. And then when it comes to the gender equality, I feel like that's an enormous step forward in the equality of reading an individual person, not basing your decision on the fact that she's a girl or a boy, basing it on the individual and understanding the individual's needs, desires, and likes.
Well said.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
I like it. All right. On that note, I think we're out because we're already 20 minutes past our time here. I hope that was not offensive to anyone and that you guys enjoyed that, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for listening. Show notes and other info can be found at our website, greatdistraction.com. The Great Distraction is listed in iTunes, and we greatly appreciate it when our listeners take the time to look us up and leave us a 5-star rating and review. That helps our show grow and motivates us to continue producing content. If you'd like to get in contact with us, you can do so using the email address, greatdistractionpodcast@gmail.com, or via our website. We're always interested in hearing any thoughts, comments, or questions from our listeners. Keeping up on the latest from us can be done in several different ways. You can add us to your favorite RSS feed tracker. The link is available on our website or in iTunes, or you can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Just search for Great Distraction, one word, no space. As always, thank you for listening, and thank you for all the support.